Okay, another thing I wish I would have known about non-hormonal birth control specifically, and this is, I might be the only one that thinks this. Alright guys, so today I am going to be doing a little update in my birth control series. It's officially been over 2 years. It's 2 years and 2 months being off of hormonal birth control. In my bed, I just got back from a trip. I'm not feeling the best. I am just ending my period and just got back from traveling. I started my period in the beginning of the trip, which kind of sucked. But anyways, I am back home, which I love the feeling of getting back into a routine. I just washed our sheets and made the bed and just sat down with my little spearmint tea and thought I would do a little update with you guys. So grab your drink and get cozy with me. I just want a disclaimer to start off this video, as I do in all of these. Please, please, please take this at your own discretion. What works for me may work for you or may not work for you. So ultimately make sure that you're making the decisions that work best for you and what you need. Also, obviously I'm not a medical professional, so be sure to seek advice from a medical professional for your own journey. I just love being able to share and collaborate with other women with our shared experiences and hope that we can find what's best for ourselves by doing so, and that you are not alone if you are having a hard time navigating this confusing journey. So I wanted to do an update since it's been officially over 2 years now. It's been 2 years and 2 months since I've been off of birth control completely. So from the age of 12 to almost 25, I have been on several different types of birth control, starting with the pill, then to the IUD, then to nexplanon, the arm implant, and then now nothing. I'm using a non-hormonal birth control, which is natural cycles, which I will get into throughout this video. And I just wanted to share this chapter of my experience since I have talked about all the previous ones. So if you have specific questions about different birth controls, I really recommend checking out those videos. I go into depth about my experience, and it's during that time, so it's a lot more accurate than years later. I feel like when you're talking about an experience, looking back, it just isn't quite the same as when you're going through it. So I'm really glad I was able to document that as it was happening, and I'm going to include a little Q&A at the end as well. I asked you guys on Instagram any questions you had around this topic, so I wanted to be sure to include the ones that were really commonly asked. With that being said, here are some things that I wish I would have known before I got off birth control. And the first one I think is kind of a more negative side effect. It is the hormonal acne. The purge is real. This is something that some of my girlfriends also experience. I've seen this on social media. Other girls have experienced this, and it can ultimately be a reason why people end up getting back on birth control. A lot of us growing up, if we had acne in our middle school age, high school age, we were often prescribed birth control at the dermatologist, which I think is kind of insane. Now that I think about it, just how abrasive that is to take something that alters all your hormones at that age. When I was on nexplanon, which was the worst birth control for me as far as my mental health, but I didn't have acne, so that was one thing I guess I can think looking back was a good thing about it. But ultimately, yeah, going off birth control, the first couple months I purged pretty badly, specifically on my cheeks, which is kind of a known area to be mainly hormonal based. After about a year, I'd say I started getting better, but I still do get the occasional pimple / breakout on my chin and my cheeks. I have a pimple here. I have a couple here because I just had my period. But usually around my period time, yeah, but otherwise it's not too bad. And there was a good 2 months just before I got my period where I just didn't really have any pimples, so that was really cool. So second thing I wish I would have known is that it is possible to have a regular period. So my whole life I've never had a normal, just regular period. It was the reason why I actually got on birth control at the age of 12, because my first year of periods were a month long of bleeding, a week off, and then another month long of bleeding. So I was just like constantly bleeding, and it was just like heavy flow. I was anemic, I was miserable. So that was like a case where birth control was needed, and it worked with that. But then I got off the pill because I just at that age wasn't taking it consistently, and my mom was like, we're not gonna, like, what's the point of you being on birth control if you're not gonna take it consistently? Once I had a boyfriend, she was just like, I don't know if you're like active or not, but like I just need you on birth control. So I understood where she was coming from as a mom. But like I ended up doing the IUD, which was also a whole experience in itself. I never really had a normal period. I had constant spotting. So like I just was always like a little tiny bit bleeding, which was so annoying because I just never was like completely off. That is not the healthiest thing. I think that we should be nurturing our cycles, and like periods aren't a bad thing at all. It just all makes sense if it's working properly, but if you're on a birth control, you don't have essentially like a normal cycle. Like the book that I was reading put this really into like a nice concise way. So like the truth is, what you experience when you're on the pill is not a real period. It's actually a withdrawal bleed. For real menstruation to occur, you need to be ovulating, but the pill prevents this critical phase of your cycle. Without ovulation, your gorgeous hormonal cycle gets stuck in a static, low hormone phase and can't create a period. Furthermore, synthetic birth control does not correct hormonal imbalances. It merely suppresses your own hormonal function and allows you to go years or decades without addressing the root causes of your symptoms. It's like our bodies are wired to have a period, and I've learned this. I think it's kind of hard to wrap your head around if you've been on birth control, but it's so true. Like I feel like my body has a natural cycle now. But one thing I wish I would have known, which I figured out pretty quickly, but was a reason why I was like not sure if I wanted to do natural cycles, and this is, I might be the only one that thinks this, is I thought that the basal body temperature thermometer had to be taken by like putting it like inside you like every morning, and I was like, that sounds like a lot of work, you know? Like down there, and I'm like, that is so like I like, okay, like tampons, like I get it, but like every day, like a thermometer, like I actually love using the Oura ring to sync it up, so that way it's just like good to go. My Oura ring tracks so many other things in my life that I didn't even really realize. Like the whole point of me getting this ring in the first place was for me to use natural cycles with it. Natural Cycles actually reached out once they heard that I would be doing an update. I did a Q&A on my Instagram, so I was gonna be putting this video anyway and talking about my experience with natural cycles. So they reached out because they wanted to sponsor today's video, so I just wanted to put that out there. And as always, my own experience and journey are so honest. That's the whole point of this video. I would never share something, especially when it comes to like this stuff, that isn't true. So you get up, and before you even like get out of bed or like get your day going, you take your BBT, which is your basal body temperature. So basically it's your temperature with like an extra decimal. So like your normal temperature you take, right, is like 98.6, and this is your like one number more, so it's 98.62 or whatever, right? And according to whatever that temperature is, it correlates to when you're ovulating and like your overall just cycle, which I think is super interesting. Like this is a thing. And so basically it'll record it in the morning and sync to the Natural Cycles app, and it will record all this data. You can also mention like if you started your period, if you were intimate, your mood, and if you have just like all these days tracked up, it will allow you to be able to tell which days are red days or green days. So these are the ovulation test strips, the LH strips, and basically they are more than 99% effective. You get your results in 5 minutes. You get 5% more green days. They're super easy to use and lets you know when ovulation is likely to happen, and it's really easy to read. It's a urine sample let the app know if you're ovulating or not. It'll let you know in the app when to take these, which is actually super helpful because you don't want to have to be peeing on a stick every day. But it will tell you if you are expected to be ovulating soon, and with that you can actually help the algorithm more by submitting your results for your ovulation strip tests. You know, the different times of your phases. It can predict when you are ovulating and when you can get pregnant, which are your red days, and those are the days you're going to be more careful and either abstain from sex or use a other form of, you know, a condom or just like whatever it is that you feel best fits your situation. And as far as responsibility goes, whether that lays on you or your partner, like that's so personal to you. Since we're talking about cycle, I want to talk about the phases really briefly because I feel like it's just not something we know much about. Cycle. So it talks a lot about it talks a lot about cycle syncing in this book. During certain parts of your cycle, you should be doing certain types of workouts that align with your energy. So the first is the follicular phase. This is the phase where the overall hormone effect on the brain is one of openness to new things, creativity, and beginnings. What do you want more of in your life? Where can you set your intentions? The next phase is the ovulatory phase. The verbal and social centers of the brain are stimulated by hormones. Talk about what you want with everyone you speak to during this phase. This is a good time for important conversations. Connect with your community and enjoy being magnetic. The luteal phase. Your brain chemistry is optimized for task and detail orientation and bringing projects to completion. In the first half of this phase, you have some energy to speak with others. In the second half, focus more on taking care of yourself. Speak up for yourself, say no more often, and set your own firm boundaries. Otherwise, you may have become irritated during this week. So that's like the luteal phase is PMS, premenstrual. And then that lasts for 10 to 14 days, your luteal does. So the first half can be different than the second half because the second half is closer to your period, and that's the PMS. That's when you are starting to get more irritable. That's when like night and day happens and you're like, I don't want to do anything. And then your menstrual cycle. So this we know, right? It's when it's a time to relax and reflect on the past month. Be kind with yourself as you review all the good things that you've accomplished and note any areas of your life that feel less than optimal or need attention. It's especially important to trust your instincts during this phase. Is your gut telling you something? Spend time journaling, reviewing, and noting what you might need to let go of and what you might need to shift in this coming month. And ovulatory is like kind of summer, you know? It's when you're gonna go out, things are looking bright, you're feeling good, optimistic. Winter, which is like your menstrual cycle, and that's when it's okay to, you know, stay inside, get cozy, read my books, journal more, maybe not go out as much, and I might not feel like, you know, working out a whole ton, and that's okay. So I just love the way to like look at that, because if you're constantly just like disappointed it's not summer and like living like it's summer all year round, you get burnt out. So our bodies aren't meant to constantly go, especially as women. We thrive when we really know when we are being cherished and nurtured and taken care of. We thrive during certain parts of the month, and other, you know, couple days in comparison, like of course we're gonna need some time to let things just be, right? So I love this way of thinking, and it makes just so much sense once I read it, that, you know, like we need to be able to take some time for ourselves. And also on the other end, when we are, you know, in our ovulatory phase, when we're like, I want to go out, like allow ourselves to be open, be social, and not question like, you know, if that's a bad thing or whatever. Like allow ourselves to just like be in that moment, whether we're in the moment of, you know, menstrual or luteal or whatever it is. And that's okay, like that's life. That's also the beauty of being a woman. Yeah, and it mentions like how when we have synthetic hormones being pumped into us, we're stuck in a long-term phaseless, there's no cycle, you know. And you might think like, oh, that's great because I can be more productive all throughout, like if I don't have a period, and if your estrogen levels are being suppressed, you're not getting that, you know, healthy dose of progesterone, there isn't enough stimulation in the brain to fully mimic the luteal phase. So you don't really have that fire to finish projects and do things. In fact, like sometimes things fall flat and they feel flat, which is what I mentioned earlier, how it was like I wasn't really as motivated to do things like and carry through them and allow, you know, myself to get better at working out and all that, because it just felt flat. I was like prepared for something, doing it, and just done. Not like prepared for something, doing it, getting excited, getting better at it, letting myself rest and getting better at it. Like, you need to kind of go with that. Like, growth is never linear, right? That's the saying. So same with like progress within your own like creative flow and your energy levels. Like, they're gonna have fluctuations. So it is so important to be an advocate for yourselves. And I think today, in this just like the recent year or two, there's been so much more outpour of support for women going off of hormonal birth control. And with that is like non-hormonal birth control methods, and there are more options now than there used to be. So if that's something you're exploring, like, I really recommend, there's a couple books I will mention also that really helped me understand more about this. Today's like social media and just like new books, new studies, new awareness around the side effects of birth control that I feel like we're so commonly brushed off as women being like overreacting. When people are being brushed off like that, I mean, you're gonna think like doctors know best, so I am just gonna stick with what this one doctor said. I really highly recommend getting tested, your hormones getting tested, going to different types of doctors that specialize in different areas of concern you may have, and not just letting one doctor's opinion completely sway you from that decision. Because if I would have done that, I would have never gotten off birth control, because when I had brought up my concerns, it was always brushed off as like, that's just a part of being on birth control, like you're gonna go into like a deep depression. And I'm like, but that's not okay. Like, I shouldn't be given something that's gonna literally make me feel like the absolute worst constantly. All right, so I think that is basically it for kind of like the things I wish I would have known before I got off birth control. I'm gonna go ahead and go straight into the Q&A. I asked on Instagram if you guys had any questions for me to answer in this video, and I had a lot of the same questions pop up, so I'll go ahead and answer those right now. All right, so first question is, how do you deal with acne? Do you find your skin changed after stopping birth control? And this is the first point I mentioned earlier, but I'll reiterate. How do I deal with acne? I am still in the process of figuring out what's best for my skin. It's definitely hormonal, so I'm trying to figure out my hormonal just like levels. I know there's a thing called a Dutch test, which is a hormone test that I want to do. It's like a panel telling you like where your hormonal imbalances are. But for now, I am just like trying to stick to my skincare routine. I finally have found that the tretinoin works really well in evening out my skin tone, and I'm getting a lot less breakouts than I usually do. But my skin has gotten a lot better after the first year of being off birth control. The first year my skin was like not happy. I didn't really have like terrible cystic acne. It was more so just like little breakouts on my cheeks. So it wasn't like to the point where I was like, I need to get back on birth control. But I did find that I had more breakouts than before. Next question is, favorite books that educated you on birth control and your biggest change in lifestyle. So yeah, the book I highly recommend, I mentioned before, is This Is Your Brain on Birth Control, How the Pill Changes Everything by Sarah E. Hill. So many good just insights in this book. Like, a big thing that I took away from this book is it's so hard to notice the influence of the pill when you're on it, and it's really only truly noticeable when you're off of it. And she said this, and I think it really like it answers this question, which I think is so crazy, because I actually just randomly like was just flipping pages and it answers the same question, and I was trying to figure out like how to word my answer, but this I think words perfectly, because the next half of this question being your biggest change in lifestyle, and I think this is kind of a good way to put it. Before I went on the pill, I was someone who craved experiences. I was really into music and food and traveling. I also loved exercising a fair amount of time focusing on my appearance, not in a super girly kind of way. I clarify only because anyone who knows me would say, wait. But I also love shopping and doing creative things with my hair and makeup. I also, without entering TMIville, was quick to notice attractive men, and my interest in sex was not lacking. After spending some time on the pill, many of these things began to vanish from the radar screen, but there was no sledgehammer. I didn't wake up one day and suddenly not want to do anything that I'd wanted to do before. I probably would have noticed that. Instead, what happened was that over time, a lot of these things just fell by the wayside. I stopped exercising and shopping. I developed a casual indifference to men and sex, and unless I was in the car, I favored silence to music. And as hard as I've tried to remember my internal narrative, what was I telling myself before about why these things were happening? I don't remember needing to develop a particularly compelling rationale for any of it. I'm pretty sure that I just assumed that I was getting busier, more mature, and less easily distracted by distractors. What I do know for certain is that at some point within the first year I was on the pill, I had stopped doing many of the things that I used to love. And my brain, doing what brains do, was able to explain away these changes in ways that were convincing enough to make it self-believable. And once I was off the pill, there wasn't a sledgehammer either. I didn't notice suddenly that I was doing things differently. It didn't feel noteworthy that I'd started to go back to the gym, or that I'd gotten a Spotify account, or that I was growing out my hair for the first time in a decade. I just felt like I wanted to do these things again, and not like they were the type of thing that required an explanation. It was only after these things I had been going on for a few months that I began to notice these patterns, that I was able to see that I was becoming the person I was before. I think she puts it in like the perfect words. When you're on birth control, you just stop doing things slowly, and eventually it'll be a year or two and you look back and you're like, wow, I've changed a lot. And I did that, and I was like, I don't like how I am. And it wasn't something I was like wanting to just allow myself to feel. I was like, I need to give myself the chance to feel like me again. At 25, I think for me was like a wake-up call of like, you're in your mid-20s and you're not happy with who you are and where you're going. What are you gonna do about it? And not saying that I like know myself completely and I'm like the happiest person ever, like I'm still figuring it out, but this is the step in the direction that I want to be going. But it's not like a night and day thing, it's a gradual thing. And so I highly recommend that book, and also In the Flow, like I mentioned earlier. And WomanCode, also by the same author, is my next book, and the author of In the Flow is Alisa Viti. Next question is, did you notice any weight gains or loss being on versus off the pill? So I did, like I mentioned, have different experiences with different birth controls. So the birth control I did gain weight on was the arm implant. That was when I felt the most like not in my body. Like I was wearing like someone else's like skin. That's so gross to think about. Oh, I don't like that I just phrased it like that. But I just felt like so much water retention. But I think that just had to do with like energy levels and water retention and hormonal imbalances that caused like cravings, and everything was just like connected. When I first got off, I did lose quite a bit of weight, but I actually didn't like that. I had a hard time gaining weight actually after I got off. So I've been working out more and just trying to eat more than I actually did in the past to like make that so I can actually gain a little bit more weight. I just want to feel like stronger and more toned. That's like my goal right now. And last question is, did you ever have a pregnancy scare? It's my biggest reason I'm so scared to get off birth control. This is such a valid fear, and if you're not planning on being pregnant, you're like, this isn't something to play around with. I have never had a pregnancy scare, but regardless, like, I'm careful. I don't think it'd be the end of the world if I did though. Like, I am in a place in my life right now, I'm about to turn 27. I am in a long-term relationship. So I think that's partially why too, like, getting off birth control was something I'm like, I can do that because I'm not like incapable of being able to take care of a child if that were to be, you know, the result. It's not my goal though, not at this time in my life. I totally understand how that, you know, is your biggest reason for not wanting to get off birth control. I just think that if you're careful, you can still use non-hormonal. You would just probably want to be extra careful and abstain and really be on top of like using protection. And like even if you are on the pill, like there's still a chance you can still get pregnant. Like that's never guaranteed either. So it's just like, which is your way of kind of like taking a risk, and how much risk are you willing to take, and like how much responsibility can you take in each scenario, and weigh like the pros and cons, and be very just like on top of whatever you decide to end up using as your form of birth control, whether it's hormonal or not. Yeah, just be really honest with yourself and like what works for you, because at the end of the day, like we all have our own experiences and our own reasons and what we're willing to do and willing to not do. So I just want to make sure like that at the end of this, like I don't want this video to be like a reason you make a decision that you don't believe in. This is just something like as a tool, like I wish I would have known years ago, because I just, yeah, like the pros for me outweigh the cons. Yeah, I think there's just so many more tools nowadays, and awareness, and just sources of just education overall, to be able to make more educated decisions around our own bodies, and the way that we decide to you know, take certain medications, or decide which types of birth control we do want to use in the end. Like it's sometimes nice to take a step back and be like, all right, like do I still need to be on this? Would I be better on a different method? What would it be like if I wasn't on anything at all? I'm just so excited to be able to have this platform to share with you guys and be very honest in my own experience. And I will continue to make more videos revolving around women's health and just like mental health, and anything that honestly at the end of the day helps you guys. I hope that this was able to be a part of your journey in some way. And again, thank you so much for watching today's video. Let me know in the comments if you took something from this video. If you have your own experience to share, I know that a lot of these comments actually help a lot of women who are also just figuring it out, not just for me, but any of you that have any experiences to share those as well. It's just a community of really just like open-minded, just safe place for women. So yeah, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for more videos. Love you. Bye.